Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to a new episode of Real Talk with Shan and Bilal. My name is Bilal.
I'm Shan.
And today, we are going to be talking about the best Trump tweets in recent times. So the first one that I want to cover is on June 4th, Donald Trump tweeted, "The appointment of the special counsel is totally unconstitutional. Despite that, we played the game because I, unlike the Democrats, have done nothing wrong." So first off, I think no one up until this point has argued that, appointing a special counsel has been unconstitutional. Because, it's kind of, there's been precedent in the past. The idea of a special counsel isn't written into the Constitution. But, we've had numerous special counsels before. We had one investigate Nixon. We had one investigate Clinton. We've had one at state levels. Appointing a special counsel isn't unconstitutional. But the thing is, what can the president do to limit it? If the president fires the special counsel, that's technically constitutional. It's like super shady, but it's
it's not something that would be good PR for the president right now.
But the only way for the president to be able to do that would be to go through the attorney general.
Yeah. And at this point, I think Jeff Sessions has recused himself, as he did very early on in Trump's presidency.
You're right.
So he can, unless he reintroduces himself. And Jeff Sessions has been pretty open on the fact that he doesn't want Rosenstein to be fired in the first place. Otherwise, he'll quit as the AG. So it's not something that's on the table right now. He's publicly said that to Trump. That's been relatively covered up, but he said that you can't fire Rosenstein or else I'll have serious doubts as to whether or not this entire process is favorable towards the Trump administration.
You can't fire... Okay, so Sessions for right now is kind of out of it.
Yeah, unless he at this point.
Unless he reintroduces himself. But if he were to reintroduce himself to make sure that there's not enough political backlash,
I don't think that's going to work.
He would have to be like... In a press conference, right? He reintroduces himself 15 minutes into the press conference. He's like, "Oh, by the way, we're firing the special counsel."
Yeah.
But even then,
that sucks.
Rod Rosenstein, Roddy boy. He's really the one that the president should be looking towards. And the president has been pressuring Roddy boy to leave, and oh my god. It's just frustrating. I can't talk about the special counsel without just going on to a train of thought.
See, there's a special counsel. No. There's a bit of a gridlock going on, and everyone's kind of going along their party lines and their preferences, regarding who they support. Same thing with the Intelligence Committee. People like Nunez and other people, I think, shifts on that council as well. Basically, depending on their end game, whether or not they want Trump impeached or not, that's how they're voting on certain procedures, how they're voting on whether or not to declassify certain documents, whether it supports the Democrats' agenda, whether it supports the Republicans' agenda, and at this point, it's basically it's gone to the point where it's extremely partisan. You know what's going to happen, but I think it's really being catalyzed by the fact that Trump is still president.
I don't, but talking about the Democrats, every single main person within this entire investigation circle is a Republican, right? Mueller was a Republican. Mueller is a Republican, hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rosenstein too.
Comey is a Republican. Rosenstein is a Republican. Sessions is a Republican. Everyone that really... a lot of the investigators themselves are Republicans. So when he keeps saying, I, unlike the Democrats, have done nothing wrong, is he still referring to Clinton? Is he being that petty, or is he hinting towards that he wants to start up an investigation of Democrats? To counter this, be like, no, do a no you, and throw it right back at him.
Well, he has said that he is considering the fact that he wants to open up a special counsel investigation on the special counsel itself, exactly what you said, rather than directly on the Democrats, on Mueller himself, and that's something that he's been considering. I don't really see how it would work, other than, the media is already not on his side.
Okay. Technically, in terms of legality, I guess I could see how it works. You have the Deputy Attorney General appoint a special counsel, and then oversight of that is the Attorney General appoints a special counsel. Wait, how would that work? Okay, so you have the executive branch, right? And then under that, you have the Attorney General. And then under that, you have at the same level, right? In terms of power, you have the Solicitor General and then the Deputy, right? And then the line of succession goes Attorney, Deputy, Solicitor, right? So this guy appoints a special counsel. To investigate that special counsel, would you Solicitor General just argues, right? He's basically like the liaison between the Department of Justice and like the court system. So it wouldn't be the Solicitor General. But then would the Attorney General be able, but then why wouldn't the Attorney General just fire him at that point? He's kind of punting the can, unless it's just being a power
Well,
play
the Attorney
against
General
Mueller.
is recused from the thing as a whole.
I know, but who else would you get to appoint special counsel to? Extra special counsel. Special counsel plus.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, you would need Jeff Sessions' approval.
If this was
Jeff
if this was an I special counsel, it'd be like I special and then I special S. But anyway, okay, keep going.
Yeah, like I was saying, you have to reintroduce himself into the entire investigation, which is what Trump initially wanted. He didn't think he would recuse him. I mean, in a New York Times interview all the way back in, like, I actually don't know, but it was in the early days of his presidency.
It was super back in the day.
Yeah, super back in the day. He said that when he said, if Sessions said that he would have recused himself from the investigation as a whole, then he wouldn't have appointed him in the first place. Now this thing opens up an entirely new set of possibilities for Trump that he hadn't previously considered, and now he's been considering with people like Rudy Giuliani, who's basically screwing him over further.
Rudy boy, oh my God! Rudy is like, yeah, he could have like killed Comey or something. He's like, we could have done whatever we wanted to Comey. It doesn't matter. The president's surviving. Rudy Giuliani.
Yesterday he apologized for it, and at that point you just knew that.
It doesn't matter. It's Rudy Giuliani. He should. Okay. Then again, Rudy Giuliani was the guy that went undercover into the mobs. Because Rudy, have you heard of Rudy Giuliani? This man's a gangster, yo, in terms of how he actually prosecuted. But
yeah.
Anyway, going back to this.
Yeah.
You're saying that the president can the president directly appoint a special counsel? Has that ever been tested?
Has that ever
Would that
happened
be?
before?
I think that'd be a big abuse of power. Because if the president wanted to appoint, okay. When you look at the different heads of the different departments, right? Ostensibly, their duty should be to faithfully execute the duties and the jobs of that department, right? Department of Justice, enforce justice. Department of Defense, enforce defense. Now, obviously, each is going to have a different slant as to how you have that, right? Like, Obama's version of the Department of Justice would be, liberal in order to defend LGBTs, minorities, etc. And then a conservative's version of that would be a conservative in the Department of Justice in order to have it be, protecting conservative ideas of, religious freedoms and stuff.
I think
like that.
more than ideologies. I mean, if you look back when Eric Holder, who was Obama's AG, he was. See, the thing is, he was such. I probably
Wait. Obama had two: Holder and Lynch, right?
Yeah, Lynch was the next one. Yeah, Lord of Lynch after.
Lynch was the bad one. Lynch was the bad one.
I mean, Eric Holder was super partisan himself. I mean, you could just see he was the one who initially covered up the whole Uranium One scandal.
It wasn't just that, but my thing
Not
with
just
Lynch's, she tried. Wait, let me finish this really quickly.
Yeah.
So it should be you appointing when you're appointing this, right? It should be in the hopes of protecting the ideas and what the institutions represent, right? It's the faith in the institution that you're trying to protect. But if the president directly appoints the special counsel, right, without really being able to go through the attorney general, the deputy attorney general, who would have a sense of loyalty to the Department of Justice, right?
There's no representative, essentially, what you're saying.
Exactly. It would become more clearly that is really a partisan move.
That would be seen as a partisan
And that's
kind
abuse
of
of power.
quasi-dictatorial power grab. At least that's what the media would play it as.
And then
So we agree.
there's the clause in the Constitution. It's like faithfully execute. Yeah. The president basically. He shall receive under Section 3 of Article 2. It says he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed and shall commission all the officers of the United States. So he's basically saying, you have to make sure that the laws are properly implemented. Mm-hmm. And if he's doing this, if he's going against the Department of Justice, which kind of deals with the law, then he's not really going in favor. He's not really supporting his own oath, and he's not really supporting what's outlined in terms of his job description. I kind of want to move on to any other tweets. Do you want to have any wrapping thoughts on that?
No, I think you wrapped it up pretty well. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about the summit?
The summit. Which summit?
The Korean. The
Oh my
Singapore.
God. Can we do that at the end?
Okay.
Okay. Because there's one other tweet I want to cover, and that is on June. Okay, I think on June 4th he was kind of panicking because he said, "Oh, I love this. As has been stated by numerous legal scholars, I have the absolute right to pardon myself," because he did all caps. So I have the absolute right to pardon myself. But why would I do that when I have done nothing wrong? In the meantime, the never-ending capital hunt led by 13 very angry, capital angry, and conflicted, capital angry, Democrats and others, continues into the midterms. Okay, once again. Democrats in Congress, sure, I get that. They're trying to tear down your administration. Have at it, boss. But in terms of the Justice Department, you appointed half of these people. A majority of the people at this point, really. Appointed this guy. He appointed Rosenstein? Or was Rosenstein a hangover?
He was a hangover.
Okay, so 2 out of the 3 main people in the Department of Justice is under him. So, it's not really... Okay, we've talked about the witch hunt overall, but this is the real thing I want to get to, okay?
Yeah.
Can the President of the United States pardon himself?
Well, constitutionally, I don't think there's anything stopping him from pardoning himself.
So you think that there's nothing in the Constitution that explicitly, would lean towards you saying the President can't pardon himself?
I don't think so. I don't. I mean, obviously, it's not
Yeah.
but I don't think there's anything explicitly written in the law that would prevent the president from pardoning himself, because I don't think there's any common law or any precedent that's been set in this situation.
Okay, so I saw this on Reddit, and then I read the actual thing, so I felt like it was kind of legit. If you look at the idea of it, it makes sense. And this idea, in 1974, okay, after Nixon had gutted the Justice Department after the Saturday Night Massacre, right? Mm-hmm. The acting Attorney General, just like I think a couple, right before Nixon resigned, he basically said, the acting Attorney General, acting Deputy Attorney General, someone high up in the Department of Justice. Mm-hmm. They basically said a judge cannot look over their own court trial. Because of that, a president cannot pardon himself. I agree with that kind of line of thought.
Yeah, I get it from an analogous perspective, but there are different types of they're different branches, so I don't know if that would quite apply to the executive branch.
Yeah,
especially with the lack of there's no lack of precedence for what he just said.
Yeah.
Because a court system has been established, that cannot happen. But something like this has not been well established yet.
Do you think it would make sense to say, if you want to use the comparison in another branch, right?
Yeah.
A judge cannot be the judge of their own trial. Congress cannot pass bills that directly help members of Congress.
Okay, there's an amendment. I think they can do that. Congress, I think what
they can't. They can't directly raise their own.
Raise their own salaries. Yeah.
Right. It's the one that was in waiting for a couple hundred years. Literally a couple hundred years. Here. Okay. I don't know how I feel about the president being able to pardon himself because.
Yeah, it was the 28th Amendment. Yeah, I think.
I was talking with Dr. Neck said this earlier. He was basically there's
27.
You know, the founding fathers, right? They likely didn't think they wouldn't want the president to be able to pardon himself, and the Supreme Court likely wouldn't think that the president can pardon himself. But I mean, in the Constitution, it's not really properly outlined. The line about pardons, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of vague. It says, "And he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment."
But this is not an impeachment trial, and that's the thing. That's what
this
makes
isn't
it
an
technically
impeachment trial,
legal.
not yet. But what this is.
Because right now, Mueller hasn't really made his motives clear as to whether or not he's going for the impeachment of Donald Trump. Obviously, it's leading up to that.
But Mueller himself can't even have the impeachment. He could tell Congress, right, in his report. He could suggest to Congress that they impeach the president. He could bring up evidence that would allow Congress to justify impeachment, right? But at the end of the day, when it says in cases of impeachment, right?
Yeah.
The case is brought by the House of Representatives, and then it's tried in the Senate, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where the entire trial is happening. So Robert Mueller isn't really part of this because of the special counsel is outside of the scope of a case of impeachment, right? I feel like it wouldn't really be a part of this. Now, so because of that, you can't really use except in cases. So if you want to say that does not allow him to use the pardon, you can't really argue that. And then he says, "He shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for the offenses against the United States," right?
Yeah.
So once again, since the Constitution applies at the federal level, right? Oh my God, this is really crazy. If a federal court, right,
yeah,
wants to try and bring up a case against Donald Trump, right?
Mm-hmm.
As in his capacity as a private citizen, not the office, but as a private citizen.
Yeah, exactly.
He would be protected by the office. They would be able to do that because at the federal level, it's an offense against the United States, the country as a whole.
Okay.
I think then he would be able to pardon himself, right?
As a private citizen who's being represented by the administration?
Yeah, so it would basically be like, so once Nixon resigned, right?
Yeah.
Because the trial of impeachment had not started yet, that was kind of mute. But Ford was able to pardon Nixon because the impeachment trial had not yet started, but federal cases might have been brought up. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if Donald Trump pardons himself at the federal level, right?
Yeah.
What I think would likely happen is that information or everything that was going on, right? Mm-hmm. All of the people that were working on this case would likely go back to different state governments, right?
Exactly.
Different state court systems. And then what would ultimately happen is the states bring up the trials against the president. So I feel, and in that case, if it's a state, if it's a state level case, no, that doesn't work. Because then they would have to, I'm sorry, I'm thinking to myself and I'm explaining at the same time.
I don't think it's a state level case issue.
Yeah.
I think it's something that can be brought up feasibly in federal courts if it involves the president.
If the state of New York, right, decides to go against Trump, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that would really fall under the jurisdiction of a state level case or a federal level case. Wait, Dr. Nick, sorry to interrupt you, but let's say New York's Southern District, right? They wanted to bring up a case against Donald Trump, right? Because of Wall Street or whatever jurisdiction that they have. Would the Southern District of New York have that as a state case, in which case there cannot be a pardon issued, or would it be seen as a federal case, in which case it can?
Well, it depends on what the charges are. I mean, it depends if they're using state statutes to charge him, or they're using federal statutes to charge him.
Okay.
I mean, the Southern District is still the federal government, isn't it?
Okay. So the Southern District would fall under the federal scope. But if the state itself, and not just the federal district, but the state itself brought the case against Donald Trump,
If the state itself, he can't pardon for state offenses.
Okay, so if it's like a federal circuit or a federal district, the president.
If he's violating federal law, or he's brought up on federal
Okay.
charges, then he's subject to a federal level pardon, which would be the executive.
Okay.
But any charges that are state, he can't pardon for state offenses.
Okay. So just in
The
case
Southern District of New York, I believe, is a federal entity.
it is, and it's it has insanely large jurisdiction, just because everything with money basically goes. At some point, you said Southern District, but just in case you guys didn't hear, what Dr. Neg basically said was that if it's a federal offense, the pardon can be issued. If it's a state level offense or if it's state statute,
It's a
you
U.S.
can't.
District Court.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say on that. The president would low-key be able to do it, but then I think it would just go down.
It's
to the
basically
states.
bureaucratic limbo.
Yeah, exactly. It would be, and then really the only people that can properly sort this out and give the constitutional backing would be the Supreme Court. So obviously, some of our opinions are going to be based off of our personal beliefs in the administration, right? Whether people want to protect it or attack it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the constitutionality of it, that would just come down to the Supreme Court. Now, you said earlier that you want to discuss the summit.
Yeah.
So how about I pass it off to you, then you give your first word on how the Korean summit planning is going on.
Alrighty, so the summit is back on for June 12th, which is in 7 days after it was initially canceled by Donald Trump.
Days?
It's 7 days from now.
That's actually
yes.
pretty damn close, yeah.
Pretty close, yeah, after it was initially canceled by Trump and his administration in retaliation to North Korea's threats that they would threaten to pull out of the summit as a result of military activity near the DMZ in South Korea it was joint military action, well, not action, it was joint military training by the South Korean and U.S. military, as well as other factors. And they did mention that they closed down one of their nuclear facilities. I forgot in which area of the country that it was in.
It was in North Korea. That's
It was,
all that
yeah,
matters.
okay, so it was in North Korea, but the fact of the matter is, if you study the history of that facility, it actually blew up. It was not sustainable. It had a positive temperature coefficient, and it basically, before it could spread toxic amounts of radiation and other materials, heat pollution as well, it basically got terminated. But he played that off as if he closed it in order to best appease to the West as well as the United States and China as well, who is basically playing the role of the moderator between North Korea and the U.S. So I think obviously the main topic of discussion at the summit is going to be denuclearization. But the problem is, in recent times, both countries have had trouble defining exactly what denuclearization is. The U.S. Thinks of it as complete non-proliferation and complete destruction of all their current nukes, whereas North Korea is basically defining it as a curbing of the current nuclear warheads and the facilities that they have. And that's the real confusion here.
In terms of nuclear weapons, right, I think the main reason why Kim Jong-un was fine with shutting down the nuclear centers was because I think they've already developed it, so there wasn't really a need for it. Like, he was comfortable enough saying, okay, my project is going long, far enough that we don't need this anymore, right? Now, with this summit, like you mentioned, it's going to be denuclearization is going to be the headline for everything, right? I'm sorry. I'm really thinking that Donald Trump, if he pulls this off, can get a Nobel Peace Prize. And I don't like what he's done with Russia. I do not like him as president. But in terms of this one very narrow, specific accomplishment, along with the TPP, but those two things, right? That's the only thing I'll support Donald Trump on, right? But at the same time, I don't think he has the clout to be able to pull this off. I just don't think he's going to be able to actually, pull off the negotiations. I don't think it would go on well enough.
Here's the thing. Historically, the U.S. and other Western nations as a whole, as a congregation, have tried to engage in talks with North Korea in the past. I mean, Bill Clinton was the one who aggressively tried to pass appeasement laws and appeasement measures in terms of summits and treaties with North Korea, and obviously to no avail, because they're currently still a massive nuclear threat to the world if left unhindered in their quest to continue to proliferate their nuclear weapons and warheads. So it has happened before. It's happened many times, and China's also not going to want a denuclearized North Korea simply because of the fact that it acts as leverage against both the U.S. and South Korea. Because the last thing China wants is on their southern border to have a pro-U.S. nation if the two Koreas are unified, which is not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, I get what you mean. Like, we've been able to bring North Korea to the table before. But here's my thing, right?
Yeah.
When you're mentioning Bill Clinton and Donald Trump are kind of completely separate beasts, right? I mean, Donald Trump took in a massive inheritance when Donald Trump's entire empire is based off of an inheritance that he got from his father, and he's basically been able to pay his way through life, right? On the other hand, Bill Clinton was born in some backward ass town in the middle of God knows where in Arkansas, right?
Yeah.
He was able to become the governor of a state by 33 and then became like the third youngest president in US history, right? If I'm not mistaken, it goes like Roosevelt, Kennedy, and then Clinton. And then Obama's at like 5 or something. He's an extremely talented person, right?
Yeah, he's an extremely talented politician, and he's very
Yeah, and that's what he is, right? He's a politician. He's able to make he's able to make those plays. He's able to, move his pawns in his different negotiations. He's able to say, okay, first we'll have this people do this negotiation. We'll weave that into here, and then we'll bring the entire group to the final table. But I'm not sure if Donald Trump can do this. And once again, it's not like there's any build-up, right? Mm-hmm. There was no foreplay here. They're getting right to the good stuff, right? It's not like you had dignitaries between the countries meeting up at Singapore, and there's going to be another one in Brussels, and there's going to be another one in Seoul, as a goodwill meeting, and then you have the final meeting in Singapore, right? You have the heads of both executives go to Singapore, right?
Yeah.
Or you have the heads of both governments go to Singapore, right? How do you move forward from that? God forbid these negotiations fail, right? And I think that they very well have a good chance of failing, right? Mm-hmm. Where do you go forward? Denuclearization is basically completely off the table because if Donald Trump squanders it, there's no way else to negotiate.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, one reason why, there were actually many reasons why the Bill Clinton deal failed. In fact, I think this is what he said in a 1994 speech regarding North Korea.
Pull it up.
Yeah.
Before I take your questions, I'd like to say just a word about the framework with North Korea that Ambassador Gallucci signed this morning. This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program.
Oh boy.
South Korea and our other allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons. South Korea, with support from Japan and other nations, will bear most of the cost of providing North Korea with fuel to make up for the nuclear energy it is losing. And they will pay for an alternative power system for North Korea that will allow them to produce electricity while making it much harder for them to produce nuclear weapons. The United States and international inspectors.
So that was basically 24 years ago.
So
and
peaceful uses of nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Not nuclear weapons. Peaceful use of nuclear technology.
And also economic reparations, because he insisted that North Korea shut down their nuclear plants, and in return, the U.S. would supply the North Koreans with 500,000 tons of heavy fuel oil every year to make up for the theoretical loss of the reactor while the new ones were built. This is from a Washington Post article where this video is also linked. And yeah, basically, it didn't work because the Republican-backed Congress and Bill Clinton. Remember, this is 1995. This was the beginning of the Gingrich Revolution, where
This was after the massacre. Democrats had been losing. They lost both the House and the Senate in the same year.
Exactly. So there was heavy scrutiny regarding that government. There was a lot of gridlock. Congress basically wanted the deal to be treated as a formal treaty. The Clinton administration did not, but because of the agreement that they had agreed to basically pass with the North Koreans, they almost had to. And then George Bush became president in 7 years, was very skeptical of the deal, and basically reverted things back to the way they were, opening them up to the access of nuclear material under Kim Jong-il. So that's basically where we're at right now. That's why Trump is very frustrated, as well as the fact that he's very hopeful of these treaties happening again. He basically wanted leverage over them initially because he didn't want them to play any games. Obama was he acquiesced to their needs, which is what Trump is basically avoiding, and it makes him look like a strong man as well. With that, we are going to close out today's episode. We did talk about two main things, the Russia investigation, as well as the hiring of a special prosecutor to investigate the special prosecutor, which is what Trump treated, as well as the summit that will be in 7 days. So I hope you all enjoyed this podcast of Real Talk with Shan and Bilal. Thank you so much for tuning in.